Roll call.
Parker. Here. Miscelinich.
Here.
Olson.
Here.
Zittergruen. Here. Chisel.
Here.
Hadley.
Here.
Neal.
Here.
Is there anyone who wishes to address the council on anything that is not on the agenda? Hearing, seeing none. Consent agenda.
Item A, minutes of the January 16, 2024 meeting, January 22, 2024 work session, January 23, 2024 work session, and January 25, 2024 work session. Item B, claims. C, Ben Dalby Mountain Bike Race Special Event. D, appointment of Steve Luce to the Telecommunications Utility Board. E, renew Class C retail alcohol license with outdoor service for Don Jose Mexican Restaurant. F, resolution setting a public hearing for the Decorah 2024 Bioretention Cell Project. G, resolution setting a public hearing for the Decorah 2024 Stormwater Improvements Project. And H, UTV snow removal permit request.
Mayor, I move the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion made by Zittergruen, seconded by Neal. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Zittergruen.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Miscelinich.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Chisel.
Aye.
Hadley.
Aye.
Motion carried. Conduct the public hearing to consider vacating a woodland protection easement at 1004 Eileen Court. You want to give some background before I do that?
Sure, so I'll give background. Item 5 is the public hearing, 6 is the action item for council to consider, so I'll do background for both. Public hearings required by state code and city code prior to considering disposition of city-owned real estate as well as interest in that real estate, such as an easement. The proposed easement vacation is for woodland protection at 1004 Eileen Court, of which there are no current woodlands present. Staff tried to do some research as to when it went into effect. It doesn't appear that there were woodlands there prior to, and if there were, we have no idea how they were removed. So the current resident wishes to do some construction on the premises, and of course can't encroach upon an existing easement, so they have requested vacation of the woodland protection easement.
Okay, with that, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this item? Please come to the podium, state your name and address.
My name's Gary Fairchild, and I live at 1004 Eileen Court. I'm just wanting to get that removed because I would like to construct a garage. And I don't know, like I said, we bought the property and all at once it's popped up. And so
Okay.
There's never been any trees there since we've been there.
Okay. Okay, I appreciate you making a comment. Anyone else? I'll close the public hearing. Consider a resolution to vacate a woodland protection easement at 1004 Eileen Court.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Chisel, seconded by Zittergruen. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call.
Chisel.
Aye.
Zittergruen.
Aye.
Miscelinich.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Hadley.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Good luck with your garage.
Yeah.
Consider an ordinance amending section 17.120015 and chapter 17.140 related to the Decorah floodplain district and floodplain management, and this is the second reading. Do you have any other information you want to pass on about that?
One thing I would emphasize, so again, second reading of the ordinance that FEMA said, here you go. take the green words, make it say Decorah. There's 2 paragraphs here that are highlighted in yellow. You can pick A or B. P and Z recommended the least stringent of those 2, and those are related to interior ponding areas. The emphasis of this ordinance change is so that the city can continue to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program. So anybody needing flood insurance for federally backed mortgage can buy through the NFIP, and it's federally subsidized. Otherwise, if the city doesn't participate in the NFIP, somebody still has to buy flood insurance for the federally backed mortgage. Now they have to go to the market and buy that, which is more expensive.
Hadley will move the second reading.
Second.
Motion made by Hadley, seconded by Chisel. Any further discussion? Hearing saying none. Roll call?
Hadley,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Zittergruen,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Miscelinich.
Aye.
I would move to waive the third reading and adopt.
Second.
Motion made by Chisel, seconded by
Neal.
Neal, to waive the third reading and adopt. Any discussion? Roll call?
Chisel,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Zittergruen,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Miscelinich.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Motion carried. Consider addendum to union contract to allow part-time police officers. Gonna get background on that, please.
Yes, so the city had a relatively recent employee retire from the police department, does wish to come back actually as a part-time officer. Our union contract doesn't currently allow for this part-time police officer position. I did confirm with the union that they have the same expectation as staff did at the onset of this. These would not be union-covered employees, but simply an allowance in the union contract for the city to hire part-time police officers under those certain terms. There is one particular, like I said, a retired employee that's in mind that has an interest in coming back, serving in a part-time capacity for the city of Decorah. What that would do is help us offset when vacation is taken, that we can offset overtime with this part-time employee.
And this would be only for certified officers, correct? To come back on duty?
Correct. We would not be looking to hire
Right.
anybody for a part-time role
Right,
and send them
right,
to the academy.
exactly. Okay.
What pay rate were they coming in at, not their retirement rate, correct?
So if they are a retired Decorah police officer, they would come in at the Decorah hour, at their pay rate that they retired from. However, they are not eligible for any benefits, including MFPRSI, which is the more expensive part of, well, not more expensive, but in relation to other IPERS covered employees, it is a pretty high cost. But they would receive no MFPRSI coverage, no other requirements other than FICA, Medicaid contributions. That's it.
I just want to applaud management and the union for getting together to come up with this idea. I know the sheriff's department's been doing this for quite a while, and it works pretty well for them. They saved themselves a lot of money, so good job, guys.
Any impact on insurance?
No. I say that with the caveat, I haven't heard this bill being introduced again, but it is still alive from last year's first year of the 90th General Assembly. MFPRSI, there was some discussion on adding up to 3 years post-separation that a cumulative health injury could come back as a workers' comp claim. I have not heard on that post 3 years, but in my legislative update, there is something that could come under a currently covered MFPRSI, which part-timers would not be.
Okay.
The only thing that I have a concern with, and with the retired officer coming back, this isn't really an issue. But one thing I think that we need to understand is that if you hire part-time, like if you hire a full-time police officer, they're vetted through civil service. They got processes. They have to take tests. They have to do physical fitness. They have standards. and to hire a certified part-time just off the street and say, here you go. I- Sometimes that bypasses some of the standards that civil service holds. So I just think if you're hiring part-time officers outside to come in to work for the city of Decorah, they need to be properly vetted. You know, I do think that there should be some sort of civil service, you know, process that goes along with that, if that makes sense.
So like perhaps, well, clearly they'd have to have qualifications in order to even do the job, correct?
Correct, yeah.
And
They gotta be a
so
certified
they-
officer.
If they're,
But if
they
a
do
certified
vet 'em-
officer, if a certified officer applies with City of Decorah, they still go through all the civil service and, you know, interviews and testing and just similar. So, just something to think about in the future.
There's not been a motion, right?
No, not yet.
I move we accept the addendum.
I'll second.
Motion made by Sittergruen, seconded by Olson. Any further discussion?
So would part-time officers, I assume, have some kind of vetting? I mean, they'd have to be hired, I assume, or,
Right,
but would there be vetting in that manner?
correct, and they don't go through civil service, correct, John?
I was just looking at that. I
That was-
had that question before, and I'm looking right now.
So, it would still go through, regular hiring process similar to a non-411 covers, 411 civil service covered employee, so that's police and fire. City code states that myself and actually the mayor through confirmation of council, we're the only ones that have hire and fire authority. So at the end of the day, this employee, I would technically have to hire with, of course, the chief's involvement as well.
So it does, Civil Service Code, Chapter 400, does apply to only permanent, full-time police officers.
And I haven't found the definition of permanent full-time, but it
Sure.
seems like it would not be included.
I intend to vote for the addendum just to put this tool in the, you know, the bag for our department. But I think Brent's sort of reservations are salient, and I encourage the staff to consider whether we, you know, might want to, you know, look at our process and see if there's, you know, something that should be done. Perhaps you look at it and you say, you know what, we don't need additional screening, or we'll do this case by case with candidate, but if you want to involve civil service or something, feel free to bring us that recommendation.
I would agree with that, too. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Zittergruen?
Aye.
Olson?
Aye.
Chisel?
Aye.
Hadley?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Parker?
Aye.
Miscelinich?
Aye.
Motion carried. Consider addendum to union contract to set street operator 4 position.
Okay, so back up about a year and a half ago, the union contract, which started July 1, 2023, when that union contract was negotiated and the council approved, it included a 4th classification, we'll call it, for the street operator, street department, street operator 4. At the time, we didn't know what that job description were going to quite entail, but the feedback from staff were, okay, we've already made it through street operator 1, 2, 3, capped out at step G on this, and I still have, 10 years left until I plan on retiring, so what else is there to strive for? Now, not wanting to simply give another classification based on longevity, we, as staff, derived a job description that, again, was approved in November of '22 that included street operator 4 have a Class A CDL, which prior to us adopting that job description, we only had one street operator that had that Class A CDL. That's now with the water department. And across the entire organization, we would have only had 3 people qualified to drive the leaf vac. One being that water employee, the other being the assistant street superintendent, and myself. And so this has actually, this job description alone has had 2 street operators go and get their class, well, one has their Class A, the 2 do, both have it. And in addition to that was a 40-hour, a requirement to participate in a 40-hour training called the Road Scholar Program, which is through the DOT. Get it?
Yeah,
Get it?
Sorry.
That's pretty cute.
Yeah. So we have one employee that has already gone through that 40 hours of training and another one that is working through that. And so we're now at that point where we need to set a rate based on the job description that was already adopted. And so that job description is in the council packet. If you've got that open, it's going to be item 9B. Excuse me, B is the job description. 9A is the amendment. If you have the packet open, it's on page 48. And so you see I have highlighted there that operator for,
But that's utility operator.
oh, shoot, my apologies. I highlighted utility, but street operator 4 is
Is what we're talking about.
is what we're talking about.
This, which is just right above where you have it highlighted, right?
It's the top one.
It's this one right here. Mhm.
So this would have minimal budget impacts. However, the street department, those are all paid out of road use tax funds, so this isn't a general fund obligation here.
Hadley will make a motion to, to approve the addition of the new operator position.
Second.
Motion made by Headley, seconded by Neal to approve the 4th position. Any other discussion?
Travis, I'm going to ask you to put some more flesh on the bone on minimal budget impact. It looks like a couple bucks an hour for a couple employees is what you're anticipating. Is that?
So that's not an immediate increase, of course. So anytime somebody moves from street operator 3 up to an operator 4 position or up among any of those, they don't just move straight up the column. So if I'm in step E, operator 3, I don't move up into step E, operator 4 role. I go up and then to the left down to, so that I don't lose pay. So it's not a direct, you don't stay in that column and just move vertically. You go up and then over to the left until you make sure you at least get a pay increase.
Okay.
Sorry, I should have been more articulate with that.
No, it's good to know how that works. I appreciate it.
Mhm.
Roll call?
Hadley,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Misselinich,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Zittergren.
Aye.
Motion carried. Discussion and possible action regarding council rules and procedures.
Okay, so included in Dropbox and council packet are edits that I prepared based on the conversation at the second meeting in January. And the focus of those includes deleting the standing committee assignments of council members. However, it does leave the special committees that can be assigned by the mayor. There was discussion about upcoming projects that there might want to be a special committee, or if you want to have committee discussions such as the wastewater treatment plant upgrades. Bless you. The mayor could still assign a special committee to work through those specific items. Also, in the draft edits, they include reducing the number of required council members to call a special meeting or work session from 3 to 2. Let's see here. Also includes in the revision, removing the prohibition for electronic participation in any meeting when a meeting may go into closed session.
Do we have discussion before we get a motion?
That's what it calls up.
Because I like discussion on the closed meeting aspect. I think that, you know, for a closed meeting, there are reasons why we have that and why we don't have it electronically. I know things have changed, so I just want to get feedback from the council on their thoughts about that.
I guess I concur with the mayor and what she says on that. I think it kind of flies in the face of what the purpose of a closed session is if we open it up to virtual participation in it. I know we have public meetings for a reason, and the state, and by the state code, we're allowed to have exceptions to that for like real estate issues or legal issues and things like that. But those are exceptions to those rules. I don't think having an exception to an exception is the proper way to go about this. I don't think it would probably come up very often either. I don't think, rarely do any of us ever miss a council meeting, and probably even rarer we have a closed session. I think we've only had probably 3 or 4 in the 2+ years I've been on here. So the chances of those two things coinciding, I think, are very slim. And to make an exception for this, I don't think is the proper way to go. I know in the last discussion we had in reference to it, there was a couple of things that came up, reasons why we should be allowed to go down that road. I think one was a trust issue, that we trust people to go into the meeting and not bring, you know, listening device or recording device or anything like that in there. I think that trust issue works both ways. I think if a person can't be there, no one of us is that valuable that that decision can't be made without that person being in attendance on that rare occasion, and that we should trust the other 6 people to make the proper decision on that. I think the other thing that was brought up was that some of the professional people or consultants that we've had were allowed to be virtual when we had these closed session meetings. And I can't say that I'm in agreement with allowing that either. I think those people are paid professionals, and they're being paid with taxpayer dollars. They should be here if we're paying them that money to be in attendance. So I don't think we should allow that to happen either. So I don't think either of those allow for an exception for virtual attendance by any council members. So I would be against that portion of it.
I guess I would be in favor of it, and I agree it's a very rare, it's a rare thing that happens, but we have seen it happen. And honestly, we've seen it happen when it comes to hiring. And I do actually think, especially when it comes to hiring and decisions that are made in closed session, that at that point, 7 members are very valuable. Because we each represent a different part of Decorah, because we represent different constituents in terms of who's talking to, I mean, we represent all constituents, but people who are talking to us, I think that those decisions are actually almost more important than some of the decisions we make. We live in a virtual world. I mean, I remember this conversation when we even were talking about even allowing virtual, the ability to have virtual meetings at all. I think we have only seen the benefits of virtual meetings, especially our public meetings, right, for people to come and watch. But I think that at this time in which we live, this day and age, that it makes a lot of sense for both experts, if we need them, to be able to call in as opposed to come. Imagine that we were talking to a lawyer and we had to pay their time and rate just to get here for a meeting that we could have online. And I do think that there are times, and I know that Zittigern can feel it as much as I can, when things come up, COVID comes up, you know, deaths come up, and you count on being here for a special meeting and then you can't be. So while rare, I think it's important that council be able to do it. And I do think that the idea of trust comes with, you know, we can all go to a closed session and then, you know, rattle our mouths off, but we don't, right? That's the whole oath we take as a council member. So if we're going to be in a virtual meeting, we will also have the same integrity of making sure that we are alone, truly alone. And I think we have the technology to do so, and therefore we should use it.
Hey, I have a question.
Accidents happen.
I want, just for clarity, is the only time you can go into a closed session dealing with employment? What else would call for a closed I mean,
Yeah,
closed session.
most common ones are gonna be, from a council standpoint, are actually gonna be pending litigation and real estate, where the discussion of real estate could change the sale price. And at times, yeah, hopefully there are not more hirings that are done that require a lot of council input, because that means I'm elsewhere. So, but those are gonna be probably your top three. There are, let's see, it goes to I, right?
Yeah, there's like 12. I just
Yeah.
read it today.
Yeah, there are.
Yeah, there's like
Yeah.
12.
There's about a dozen instances when the council can go into closed session.
Okay.
The, on page 10, the electronic meetings and attendance, it does indicate electronic or video communications for the council session. And then in number 3, it specifically references a telephone speaker system. I think that's dated, especially because we have Zoom. So I would ask that number 3 mimics the heading paragraph under electronic meetings and attendance to indicate electronic or video communications.
On page 10,
Page
number
9.
3.
Page 9.
Mine,
PDF.
my PDF is showing 10, but
Oh,
it's
I'm
the
sorry.
electronic meetings and attendance section.
Mhm.
Right.
The
Number 3.
paragraph under the heading description indicates electronic or video communications for all the council. And then item number 3 says a telephone speaker system installed in the chambers. I just think it's old school. We don't even have a telephone in here that I know of. So I would just ask that number 3 be revised to,
We've used these in the past on speakerphone when Zoom didn't work.
okay, well, that would be an electronic means of communication, right?
Well, with phone.
Right,
With the
so I
speaker.
mean, if we just said electronic or video communication, like we do in the header of that paragraph.
Yeah, I agree, Ross. I think that would tidy up the language, make it kind of cohere with what we actually do. Back to the issue of whether or not we allow electronic participation for closed sessions. There's been 3 times in the last 2 years where people in Decorah didn't have their representative in the room due to weddings, funerals, things that were planned long in advance of the closed session. So if that's the direction the council wants to go, I hope that they'll consider requiring that all closed sessions happen only during normal pre-scheduled Monday night meetings of council, which I think would be a terrible rule, but that way at least then, they're all on my calendar already. So that, I think for me, those are the 2 options that I think would be reasonable. However, I think having the flexibility to have meetings that haven't been scheduled months in advance is sometimes very helpful. And this rule, to me, puts us in a position where we can have that flexibility without disenfranchising the voters who elected us to represent them in these crucial meetings. So for me, yeah, it shouldn't ever happen. I'd like to point, Kirsten and Mayor, I'd like to point you to the first bullet point, that mere convenience isn't a legitimate reason to be absent, and the presiding officer shall rule on the legitimate reason. So,
Where are you at, Steve?
number 1 under
Okay,
electronic
number 1,
meetings.
okay.
I'm just pointing out that if there's ever a sense that this is being abused or used for the sake of mere convenience, these rules do have a way for the mayor to say, Steve, that's not a good enough excuse. I'm not going to allow your participation in this meeting. So there is a check on this, and I think that's a good check. But if Randy's got COVID, I don't want him in the room, but I do want his voice and his representation. If someone's mom dies, I want them to go be with their family and not feel like they need to be here because the city's facing an important business decision. And there's no reason in 2024 that we can't allow for that. If it gets abused, Mayor, we have a way to stop it. And I personally like the rule as written.
I did go on and try and find out information. There's not a lot. I found one that said no and another one that said yes. So it depends upon, whatever the council wishes. But I did want to have a discussion.
I would make a motion that we pass the council rules and procedures with the edits, adding in Ross's suggestion, but allowing for emergent virtual meetings in closed session.
I guess I'd like to hear from the other council members first before we put a motion.
I appreciate,
It called for discussion and possible action.
Well, I thought we
Well-
do make a motion and then we discuss.
We had a motion.
But
We
the
don't
agenda
know.
item calls for discussion and possible action, so it's part of the agenda item, the discussion.
okay, second. Now we can have discussion.
Well,
Okay.
we could have before,
Uh,
without him.
Motion by Neal, seconded by Hadley. Now
My-
discussion.
The reason for my second, I did appreciate the highlighting of number one, that the mayor does have veto power in this regard. So it's not an exception to an exception, because the mayor has the ability to withdraw the option. And being that the Robert's Rules of Order allow the mayor to run the meeting the way the mayor wants to run the meeting, I think it's empowering, but it does provide the rest of the council a framework of expectation for participation. And so I think it's solid as written, and that's why I seconded it.
I mean, I can say, I mean, I missed a staff hiring closed session because my mom was having surgery, right? I mean, so there was just a little bit of like, I could have easily, I was doing nothing, but I wasn't gonna not be there, right, at the moment that she was done with it. And there was no reason I would have had to have missed that. I could have Zoomed in at that point.
But I would say there's ways you can make your opinions. You may not be privy to all the information that gets put out at a closed session meeting, but generally you're gonna know what the topic is being discussed. And there's ways you can let the mayor, Travis, or any one of your council members know what your opinion is, so it can be voiced during the course of the process, so.
What is the real, like, I hear you.
Right.
You're opposed to it. What is your opposition?
It makes no sense to me. The point of it is to have a closed session so that information does not get out to the public at that point in time. Accidents do happen. I was in the military for a number of years and had the top secret clearance. That does not give me the permission to go in and look at anybody's top secret documents. There were certain facilities where you're required to go in and look at those. Those information did not leave those. Now granted, those were much more sensitive issues than what we're probably dealing with here, but there's a point. It's the same principle. It's a closed session. That's what it's for. It's allowed as an exception to the rule of having public meetings. I don't see a reason to go against that exception to the exception, like I said.
In the secure box rooms now that the military has with special compartmented,
Skiff.
the skiff rooms, right? With all the shielding and everything, right? Guess where they're having meetings?
Virtually.
In Zoom.
Yeah.
They are calling in missiles. They are doing battlefield strategic planning all virtually. They are not doing it on paper anymore. Times have changed. Burn boxes still exist. We hand off our physical papers before we leave closed sessions. People in Zoom wouldn't have access to that kind of information. The protections are in place. The mayor has the ability to veto. The mayor is the commanding officer of the situation in this. I think we have to have trust.
I do think there was times where we had a special meeting where the information wasn't given to us until the special meeting. I hear you in terms of like.
Not all of it, but enough of it to make your opinion.
No, I mean, so in the franchise agreement, I can say this for Alliant, when we had a special meeting, there was a lot of information. It was actually a closed session call in which we were able to hear things that we couldn't hear before. And I think that is what, when I'm looking at this, I'm looking at like, any council missing that meeting couldn't have weighed in before. And if they did, they didn't have all the information to weigh in. So how valuable is that? So to say then that we want to make a decision with only 6 council members on things of that nature, when we could make with all 7, doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I think, I do agree with the fact that times have changed a lot and that we do use electric attendance for the meetings. I think I kind of appreciate what he says. I kind of see both sides. But also, if it was, I'll ask Travis this question. Let's say it's really a litigation thing, a property thing, then can the mayor state the only way they would be attending that meeting is if they were present?
So, if I understand your question, your determination would be whether their reason for participating electronically was valid or not, or a matter of mere
Gotcha,
convenience.
I've gotcha.
So it's not based on the
That's-
subject matter,
Okay,
it's just based
I
on why they're not
understand.
there.
I understand. Okay.
But to Emily's point,
Yep.
we did have that franchise meeting that was closed virtual. We did have multiple HR things that were virtual. And we've had planning with real estate. So it's happened more frequently in the last 4 to 6 years than
Probably.
maybe one would think.
Okay. Any other further discussion?
I appreciate all the other changes to the rules and grateful for the staff's work on this. And I'd like to hear the exact language of Emily's suggested edit to bullet 3. I'm sure staff would like that too.
So bullet 3 doesn't have an edit then,
It was moved
other
with
than
that.
Ross's,
Suggestion.
sorry, do
Telephone speaker is.
you want to read it, Carrie, what you have written down? It'd be, page 9, item 3, reading electronic means as opposed to utilizing a telephone.
I mean, it can say telephone or other electronic or video communications, truly just mimicking the sentence above.
Yeah. Correct, yeah,
Yeah.
just number 3 there, yep.
Just do electronic. What was your?
Just say electronic systems are installed.
It'd be similar to like what's in number 1.
So my comment would be to make 3 indicative of the 21st century.
Okay, any further discussions?
So then as it is now, number 5 would stay as written. That's how
5
I
is the
wrote it, yep.
deletion. So there's no change to the motion because number 5 is drafted to show that gone.
I see. I understand. Do you only have 4?
So the motion on the table is as drafted, except the one noted change in item 3 on that
Yes.
page 9.
That's correct.
I would like to echo Steve's thoughts too, as far as the rest of it, the changes that were made. I think this is an improvement to our committee system, and I think it'll work well for this council, the other changes.
Okay. Roll call?
Neal,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Chisel,
No.
let's see, Parker,
Aye.
Ms. Linich,
Aye.
Olson,
No,
Zittergren.
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. Discussion on draft fiscal year 2025 budget. I'll turn that over to you.
Yes, so included in the packet is an updated revision of the draft. So it's version 2.1. That is the most current budget draft version out there. Last week I did push out a 2.0. There were 2 typos that I had to go back and correct, but didn't change anything substantial really within the budget. They were CIP sheets. One was the mitigation banking. The CIP sheet still said 215,000 instead of 175,000. And the wastewater treatment plant in the CIP sheet summary still said $4,900 instead of 4.9 million. So those edits were part of 2.1. But the packet as it stands today includes the final adoption and budget certification page utilizing the emergency management support of a local emergency management commission levy to generate $118,680 that would then be used to pay the dispatching contract with emergency management. That still leaves like a negative roughly 30,000 in general fund operations revenues less expenditures. So a net position change in general fund of about 30,000 loss. That fund balance is still actually fairly healthy. It's doing fairly well there. So not a tremendous concern, but something I do want to point out. I always strive to have a black number there. I figured that the largest part of tonight's conversation, I know it was brought up at the tail end of that Thursday budget work session, were the nonprofits. So right now, again, all the nonprofit requests can be funded in the existing budget either through the Hotel Motel Fund Council contingency, or one that we would point out, Northeast Iowa Community Action Council. Based on the services they provide, we could use TIF LMI funds, which has a current balance of just shy of 20,000. So we could utilize TIF LMI for their funding request.
And that's the only thing that that fund can be used for, right? The TIF LMI?
It has to be a
is-
project that benefits those of low, moderate, yes.
Right, so it is an appropriate apples-to-apples use of funds?
And it has to have a housing component too, so yes. That's why it is very narrowly defined. That's why Northeast Iowa Community Action Council can fit that role.
Right.
I'd recommend we utilize those funds for that.
Is that the only one that would fall in that category? Community action.
The one that makes the best sense for it. The others
Do they
might be
have
able
to use
stretch.
that money then for a new housing project, or can that just be in support of their current mission, which includes some low-income housing?
Correct, it can be
Okay.
in support of their existing.
Thank you.
Yeah, we would just have to tell them, you have to use this towards a project that benefits those of low, moderate income for housing.
And in her presentation recently, they did talk about the housing coordinator position being underfunded. So there's no, that's applicable, right? There's no, it doesn't have to be a physical, tangible improvement.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Then I think it's great.
Also anticipated a discussion tonight. I thought the general consensus was this was the track council wanted to head. If not, this is the time for council to have more conversations on different things you might want to see. We have another checkpoint at the next council meeting where council can have further discussions before we need to set a hearing at the next council meeting. So like we can have more conversations at the next one as well, but at the end of that meeting, we have to set a hearing, right? Or no, we can get into the first one in March. Yeah, so we can get into the first one in March.
I spent a lot of time today looking at the budget. I know we still have discussions to have about the nonprofits, but with that exception, I think that it's a great budget. It advances, gets us started on a lot of projects that have been in the offing for a long time. I hope that a lot of what's in this budget actually happens in that fiscal year, but there's a lot of big exciting things: sewage treatment plant, fiber, project up at the airport. These are good things for the city that'll make us a stronger city for generations. And I love that we're doing it without planning on taking on debt with no corresponding revenue. That there's revenues associated with all the debt in this budget, and I like that we're lowering the levy as part of this plan too. And I hope that the people of Decorah are as excited about that as we are.
Just a real quick question for the emergency management levy.
Mhm.
So the county emergency management levies everybody in the county except for Decorah. Is that right? How that works?
No, so all county tax dollars, or every resident in Decorah also pays a county contribution. However, there's a city rate and a non-city non-city rate.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna pretend to fully understand how that world
I'm
works.
super confused about it as well.
Yeah, but there's, all city residents do pay taxes to
For
the
the
county as well for that, but that is a levy that, what was it, 2 years ago? I think we negotiated a new dispatch contract that actually took out, there was a convoluted math formula that took into consideration the tax dollars paid by residents of Decorah into the county to make sure that those dollars got counted towards the dispatching services. But at that time, we were still paying upwards of, was it just shy of 140,000? So the city's contribution was just shy of 140,000 a year. Renegotiated that contract, got it down to, let's get rid of the math formula. You know, when I buy a Netflix subscription, I want to know how much you're going to charge me, not how much you're going to charge me based on how many shows I watch and all that stuff. How much you're going to charge me to have Netflix? Same applied here. That dollar amount negotiated with council to start was 115,000, and then increases by the CPI of urban consumers for an annual for 5 years. Does that sound familiar? Yeah, I believe it's a 5-year contract. So even at the end of 5 years, using the CPI for urban consumers, we anticipate we'd still actually be right around that 140,000 mark.
And just my question was, it's like if you have the county emergency management that, levies for dispatching funds, and then city of Decorah residents is a little bit different because they're in the city, and then we have a local levy also to supplement the county. Why can't emergency management just levy everybody and then be done with it? And then we don't have to go through this. That's just my.
It's a great point, and there's actually a push for legislation to do just that. Because right now, the current emergency management levy at the county level, it's actually under the county supervisor's levy. So it's now, it's currently within their, I don't want to call it threshold, purview, but it's actually one of their levies. Kind of like we have this one, this support of a local emergency management commission. There is actually proposed legislation to pull that from both cities and counties and just give them their own. And for Decorah, I would agree, it would be a huge benefit for Decorah, Winnebago County. We've got centralized dispatching services operated through the Emergency Management Association. They should levy for the entire county, and that way it is the same allocation regardless of where you live.
But this year, this was an option that we could
Right.
take advantage
Correct.
of.
Yeah.
That's why we were.
Yeah, and I'm definitely for it. I'm just, just
No.
kind of confused about the, the
It
county
is.
levy and the local levy when,
Yeah, it is confusing.
I wish there was just one levy where it says, all right, everybody within Winnebago County pays, a
think-
levy towards emergency management.
Sounds like
and
what you're
dispatching.
saying is there's some
'Cause
legislation.
I always
right?
thought they had their own separate levy.
So they have, it is just like ours shows up as a separate levy of support of that local emergency
But
levy,
it's under the umbrella.
but
of the
it's under the
supervisors.
umbrella of the supervisors. And so, right now, that legislation is to pull that out and have their own.
Do you happen to know if that levy is part of the county general levy or the county rural levy?
I don't know with any certainty on which one that falls under.
Thank you. Because we pay the county general levy.
Correct.
And 25% of county collected tax dollars are collected on property in city limits. So it's interesting, Brent, this is not just happening with supporting dispatch services, but in many, many places.
Sure.
We're paying for things twice.
Yeah.
When we pay for half, we're actually paying for 62.5%.
Yeah.
Did you want to have more discussion now as far as the nonprofit is concerned?
That's up to council. I know there was discussion at the end of that Thursday work session on making those determinations because these nonprofits, to give them the knowledge on whether the city plans on funding them or not. It is built into the budget that we can make it work for all these nonprofits, but ultimately, again, up to the council to determine if we fund them or not.
Am I missing, I didn't see when I went through it, the nice sheet, the spreadsheet that compared what we gave last year. We didn't give anything last year.
Nothing.
But what we historically gave to compare to what we gave, or thinking, what they're asking for this year, like I kind of would like
Some
a
of them
refresher.
had stated in their.
Some didn't. In fact, some it was so hard to figure out. I'm assuming like that the Regional Housing Trust Fund wants 12,500,
12,500.
but it was not, they said increased project amount, but are they asking for a specific project? It was their letter was a little unclear. So I wasn't and I also wasn't clear what the chamber was asking, except for just please consider funding us.
17.5.
The chamber?
Yep.
But that's also
That's
per city, isn't that?
Bold.
It's in bold on the, about the middle of the page for the chamber. Bold letters there.
What page are you on?
Yeah.
163.
Oh, I'm sorry, not the chamber. It was the hotel motel. Wait, yeah, although we understand. So was hotel motel asking, they don't have a dollar amount?
No, so hotel motel funded the chamber allocation, because if you remember last year when there was no nonprofits funded, the council said, go ahead and utilize the existing hotel motel tax dollars that are going out to like the hotel motel steering committee, use those for administrative purposes.
Got it. Okay, so they were just in support of the chamber's request.
Correct. So
Thank you.
hotel motel steering committee said, we'll use this funding over here.
I think something that we ought to keep in mind as we're, discerning how to best steward taxpayer dollars is that there are ways that we're already supporting many of these organizations simply in terms of providing them with infrastructure that's not taxed in city limits. That the sort of Winnebago County Development and Tourism, we take care of their sewer, we, subsidize police protection, fire protection, and they don't pay property tax as a nonprofit. That's a contribution Decorah is making that some of the other communities they serve, at least the Winnebago County Development and Tourism, aren't making. And I think it'd at least be appropriate to consider adjusting our contribution to account for the fact that we're providing some other services.
And would you consider that for each and every one of them?
I think for the ones, the Decorah specific ones, like the Chamber of Commerce, that wouldn't make as much sense. But for the places that have their physical location in Decorah, I think it's important to acknowledge that when you're a nonprofit operating in any municipality, one way that the community is already supporting your mission is in providing you all the services of any other property owner in town without collecting any taxes.
I do think these particular nonprofits do extensive work on behalf of the city and the council, right? I mean, in terms of economic development, tourism, the Housing Trust Fund, community action. We're not just talking about any nonprofit. We are talking about nonprofits specifically targeted towards bettering the lives of our entire citizens, but also essentially the work that we would be doing to some extent, right? I mean, it's kind of why I always thought that Earl was something we should fund, because it's public transport that we don't have. So in my mind, they are doing that. I'm always cognizant, though, of the hotel motel funds that we do give them, and not trying to sort of double dip into limited resources. And how do we best use hotel motel funds and our nonprofit money to really further economic development? And I would welcome the chance in the next year to really think as a council how we really, what would our economic development vision look like in terms of what we can do as a council and what we want other organizations to do, and how do we better direct them to do the things we want to do? Because I still don't think we've hit the mark on our downtown. It's better, but it's still not where I feel like our vision and hope is for our downtown businesses. And I think that as I think about the money that we give towards economic development, we're not hitting that mark, and that's really where I want to get to, more than I want to nitpick at what these organizations are doing. I don't think any of us could begrudge how great these organizations are and the amount of work that they're doing, and the amount of work that they're doing essentially on the behalf of our city to do it, and using city dollars to do it. So that would be my take. And I still, the only other one I have a question about, and then I'll stop talking, was Winnebago community, not the last one, tourism, county development tourism. Is that the same amount we gave them before we didn't give them money last year?
So
Or is it a raise?
I did just throw in Dropbox the fiscal 24 spreadsheet that showed what everyone's request was since fiscal year 13
Great.
on through 24. All the numbers in 24 are what were requested, but all were denied.
Okay.
So that does say in the notes column, denied for all of them. So let's let's see, Winnebago County Economic Development was
Does it have a,
$18,968 requested in fiscal '24.
Didn't we fund Earl a little bit or something like that? I thought
No.
we did.
We,
I thought
there
we
was
did.
a first attempt, there were some cuts, got us down to, a number that was still positive, and then, not 718, what was the other bill that hurt us, 105,000 last year? That, multifamily residential, where they did the oops on the residential
Right.
rollback calculation, so we had to go back and do another 100,000 plus in cuts. That's when the rest of those
So
fell
it didn't
off.
make the second cut then? is what
Correct.
you're saying? Okay.
Hey, where did you put that in the Dropbox?
In tonight's council meeting folder.
what's the total requested this year from our nonprofits?
58,037.
Total?
Great.
What would people think about, in looking at the Northeast Iowa,
Sorry,
it's okay, did you find it?
yeah, I did.
Okay. In the Northeast Iowa Community Action Ask, they are targeting low-income housing, energy and water, public transit, weatherization, crisis and housing and family development. All of those bullet points fit within the sustainability plan as far as actions within the sustainability plan. I know that, Travis, you had talked, or we had spoken off council about how potentially we could work with the economic development or chamber to use funds to do a facade project in downtown. It's been a council, sorry,
I apologize.
it's okay. Are you good?
I'm good.
Okay. Over previous years, we've discussed as a council and the mayor about how we can work with downtown on facade projects, things that would reinvest into the C3. Could we acknowledge that community actions goals are all sustainable goals and fund that portion out of sustainability, which would free up money toward our 30,000 deficit, to allow for some council contingency that we had talked about with hotel motel money. Can you comment on that, Travis?
Yeah, so, I'll just put it bluntly, we can assign, the council can even say, there's nothing hard and fast that dedicates sustainability dollars to the Sustainability Commission. So even if there's an item that you don't believe directly correlates to the sustainability plan, but you think it is something that's worth investing sustainability dollars in, that's well within the council's right. So you absolutely can. One of the what Ross is talking about is I've been having conversations with both Winnebago County Development and Tourism and the Chamber of Commerce, and looking at, instead of reinventing the wheel and coming up with a city initiative that the council could invest city dollars into, can we partner with the Chamber of Commerce on an existing program? And they do have a current revolving loan fund that requires owner buy-in, revolving loan fund from the chamber. And my thought at the time was, if the city can actually be a third leg of the stool, where we can come in and say, okay, here are X dollars we want to contribute annually towards this project, where it would be a third owner equity, a third revolving loan fund through the chamber, and a third grant to achieve a specific outcome. So, yes, is the short answer. Council can do that.
So I like the idea of paying community actions 7,587 out of sustainability. I think that makes sense, and then funding the rest with our dollars.
Everybody on board with that?
When you say the rest, you mean all of the other requests?
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to just go through them one by one. If you don't, I'm sorry, I know that's pedantic, but it's a fair amount of money we're talking about.
I think that's a good idea.
Can we start at the top?
Roughly
I feel like we've been,
roughly 50 grand altogether, yeah.
and For me, it'd be helpful to know what the hotel motel excess will be. I mean, I know that we can't predict that exactly. We don't know who's coming on vacation here. But what are we on pace for it to be this year in excess of what we've already committed? Like what kind of pot of money are we working with is the question.
Yep, give me a second here. That's this one, right? Oops, sorry. Zoom out so you can see it. This is the hotel motel under the general fund detail, right? Okay, so if in the budget pack, or excuse me, not budget packet, council packet for tonight, page 148. So it's that FY25 fund detail. The third cluster is hotel motel. You can see beginning balance, revenues, expenses, and then ending balance. So these are, again, FY24's budgeted revenues and expenses. So that'll leave a remaining balance at the end of fiscal 24 of 82,000 and change. Based on our budgeted revenues and expenses, which includes all of enough to cover all of the nonprofit requests. That was 86,000? 84,000?
871.
That was budgeted in expenses. We would still have a council balance of a hotel motel balance of 133,000 roughly at the end of fiscal 25.
And that's the money that could go towards things like this being the third leg of a stool.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. That is the hotel motel council contingency.
Is what we had
And the beauty of that
last year.
is it
That's what we
uses,
projected to have at the end of this year.
the beauty of that is that it uses tourism money to better our C3 and raises our taxes, you know, our taxable value. So it seems like a really good use of funds.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly, that's why I want to consider these one by one, because I feel like every time we give $10,000, you know, to good organizations, there's also good organizations that didn't ask us for money that are doing work that has a quasi-municipal purpose, like the Decorah Food Pantry, the senior center. So I want to look through these organizations knowing that when we only have a pot of money that's so big, and if we, you know, spend 50,000 here, that's 50,000 less to invest in FCODs or in RC3. So I just want to make sure we're you know, putting our money where we want to.
And if we're going to have this discussion, can you remind me, well, it's always helpful to have how much they already get in hotel motel funds for each of the organizations.
Yes, so 150 for Decorah Jobs, which is neither Wenatchee County Development and Tourism or Chamber, so separate entity, and then 125 goes to the Hotel Motel Marketing Committee, which consists of Wenatchee County Development and Tourism representation, Chamber representation, 2 council members, a member of Hotel Motel, community, retail community, restaurant community. I'm trying to remember, I think, which 2 council members are Hotel Motel steering? It's in the rules and procedures.
I got named this year.
I think Steve and I are.
Okay.
It was Kirk.
Yeah,
and
because it
Randy.
was Kirk and it was Randy, right? And so that is it's a board established through this 2080 that they determine what that $150,000 goes to. And they were the group that decided to take that hotel motel marketing funding and give some to the chamber to go ahead and fund that operation. They've also used it in the past for, they call it mini grants, whether it's like, I know Nordic Fest has been awarded a mini grant. Maybe Randy, you could speak a bit more to.
Well, we had standing grants that we gave to Nordic Fest, Vesterheim, and Seed Savers as being the 3 biggest nonprofit attractions in the community. And then for a while there, we would have up to a couple thousand, you could come in if you had a special event, which they've gone by the wayside. So those mini grants is just a standing appropriation now on those other three. Now, new people might change it, so. But it was $7,500 for their marketing, and all of it included local motel accommodations, listings to get people, put heads in beds was the program.
And the 2080, short of again last year, council saying go ahead and use that allocation for administrative purposes, does actually have a limitation in there that only 2,500, 2,000, it's a very nominal number, can go towards administrative expenses for that hotel motel marketing committee. So on a normal year, that's all that's capped at. Everything else has to go towards a program or something like that.
How did they do without our money last year?
Well, hotel motel gave them funds that would have otherwise
Yeah.
gone to those efforts.
Hotel Motel got the hotel money, just to make sure we're all on the same page. They got like the 100 and whatever
Yeah,
thousand.
125,000,
Yeah,
that's
they
what
just
I'm
didn't
wondering.
get this, yeah.
But these nonprofits.
They got
didn't
that.
get theirs.
They just didn't get this additional, like,
Right.
the chamber didn't get money from us.
Right, so they didn't get the additional 17 plus 19.
Right.
Right, so then I'm wondering, like, what did they not do that they would have done if they had the entire additional, what, 50,000, 40,000? Anybody know?
Chamber, the 17,000.
Or you're talking the hotel motel steering committee, since they did not have the 17,500 that they gave to the chamber.
Right.
What would hotel motel do with that money?
Right, so they gave 17,000 to the chamber. The chamber then did what it normally does. Winnebago County Tourism did what they normally do. So what did hotel motel not do because they gave money to those two organizations, right? It's still our money, right? It's 125 is still our money. So I'm just curious, what did they not do?
Cut down on some of the publication advertising and around the area.
So billboards,
Well, not the billboards so much, magazine advertising and regional publications, targeting the Madison and Minneapolis areas because they're the most frequent flyers coming to Decorah. Cut back on advertising in Des Moines, Iowa City, Davenport markets because we weren't seeing a return on the investment, and rather than try and grow that, just cut it out.
So then the
Fewer
question,
brochures and the
Yeah,
visitor
Yeah.
center, stuff like
Yeah,
that, right?
yeah.
Just out of curiosity, how do you track that return on investment?
This new software system, and it's way above my pay grade how they do it. And people log in on it, where they're from, the visitor center, when they come in, they ask where they're from, how they heard. I mean, just
They have a sign-in sheet
personal
with visitors.
conversations.
so I do wonder, the question that I'm thinking, right, is if they, last year, it worked for that 125,000 to be redirected to the chamber in Winnebago County, then does it behoove us then to keep back some more of this nonprofit money that we then can use to increase that pot of money for things like grants and downtown improvements?
So you decrease the amount of 17.
I'm not sure. I'm just throwing it out there because it does seem to me that they seemed to get by last year. And we still had quite a bit of tourism, as Randy just said. They realized it wasn't that effective what they were doing with the money anyway.
They were trying to grow the market, trying to grow into these areas, and it didn't happen because we pulled money back.
Oh, I thought you were saying it wasn't effective before that. Sorry.
Well, it was new things that they were trying. I mean, you go for the low-hanging fruit first. Madison, Minneapolis are closer here.
Yeah.
Now they were trying to expand into the Des Moines, Davenport, Iowa City market to get those folks up here.
and what's tough is we don't know. I mean, 17,500, for all we know, could have resulted in $200,000 in economic activity in town and $5,000 in additional hotel motel tax. That would have been great for our businesses downtown. But we don't know.
When do we have to decide on these nonprofits, whether we fund them or not? By what time?
You don't,
I mean,
that council decision has no implication on the budget itself because the expense authority is already built into the budget, as well as the other, again, the budget achieves two main things for a city. One, it gives the city budget authority, so you can go ahead and spend money, because you said you were going to, and this is what it's going towards. And the other thing, most importantly, is it sets the tax rate. Everything else afterwards, you know, as much work and work goes on the front end and preparing the budget and everything, all of this can change with one amendment. And that's all that's needed. But the main thing is we set the property tax rate with the budget. And all these discussions that are happening right now have no implication on that.
And that's cool as heck.
It is, except I think in fairness to our nonprofits, we do need to let them, they're also budget planning. And so for us to just be like, we don't know, you know.
Yeah, you
In
can't-
fairness
you
to your
gotta
question,
base
Emily,
this on the-
I can meet with them, and since Randy has been kind of forced to vacate his spot with the chamber or whatever, I've taken that spot over. I will be glad to meet with them and find out a good answer to the question that you just posed, because I think it's a valid question, and get an answer by the next meeting.
Because I think it would be helpful to know what hotel motel would do with the funding that they would hold back then that they gave away before. Because that's really what we're weighing, right? We're really not weighing who gets the money, it's what is the money being used for.
This is chamber.
Well, and
Right, but I can meet with all three of you.
a point of clarification though,
Yeah.
it's important to note that the request is from the chamber,
That's what I was gonna
Right.
say.
which was fully funded because hotel motel committee said, here's the money for the chamber. So even if council says, you know what, hotel motel did a good enough job, we still actually have a 28E agreement, a contractual agreement that says you're going to get this money. So it would actually be, the council would have to say, we're not funding the chamber again, so hotel motel, you should backfill
Right.
that.
Right,
So it is a contractual obligation to the steering
sure.
committee.
You know, I feel that we should give them some money to the chamber, but perhaps not the full 17.
Yeah. And I'm not advocating any, I'm just curious, it's more of I'm not advocating for any amount or no, however that it's said, right?
Okay.
I'm not really making that decision, I just want to know what people are using the money for.
I'd like to understand why 17,500. I mean, I know that other organizations have a sort of per person, you know, kind of goal. I just assume that this represents, you know, they provide us, I would say, that much in value or more, in terms of being our welcoming center to the community.
Totally agree.
Right.
Um,
Why don't we have
Yeah,
Kirsten check?
That's
it out?
great. I'd like that. I just don't want like us to say, let's punt on this decision, and then we never, you know, like,
No,
I
let's
want this
have-
to stay on agendas.
Let's have him check it out and bring it back at the next
And I did meet with Jessica a couple weeks ago or whatever, just to kind of touch base with her. And, I mean, she pointed out that we have a really, really good opportunity with the three people that work up there right
Yeah,
now.
you did.
There's certain people that come into those jobs that can kind of get organized with, like they had the restaurant week last week or women's weekend out and kind of organize those type of things. And then there's people that can work with getting grants and funding and stuff like that. We have a wonderful opportunity. All three of those people are good at both of those things. So I think this is a perfect opportunity to take advantage of that.
Now, why don't
and
you
get
check,
the
why
best we
don't you
can out of it.
check
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
see how they do?
Alyssa,
Like,
in her
Alyssa, right.
position,
Right.
electronic Facebooking and Instagramming,
Yeah, the three of them.
that's her forte.
The
and
three of them are really good at it, so.
She just started.
Yep.
So the next one would be helping services. I have a question about this. How does this different than, and maybe I'm, you know, the holiday lights money that comes in?
That's in-kind donation that we give them at that with our people. This is just a $1,200 cash request, I believe.
But wouldn't they be, what are they using that money for, and did that not come from holiday lights slash?
Advocate resources, mentoring, substance
Because-
prevention and abuse.
Because the holiday lights is meant for their operation, correct? And so,
Holiday Lights is their major fundraiser
that's a fundraiser,
to keep their doors open.
that's correct.
And then they use the money for battered and abused, mentoring programs.
So this
Drug
is
and
just
al-
like for the city to give them $1,250 that would add to that.
To help them promote these programs and
Okay, I just,
move around, yeah.
And realistically, it may be more, the city participated, gave us money, and they can use that in a grant.
Okay.
Like,
Gotcha.
they can
Yeah,
say that they
you are
have city
right.
support. It's a pretty negligible amount of money. But saying
I
that you're
agree.
supported by the city of Decorah in grant writing
I understand.
may be more powerful than the
Okay.
actual amount.
I just wondered.
I feel like it's easy to get in the trap of sort of answering the question, is this a good organization? And
I know
there
it's
are
a good
hundreds of good organizations in this town, and we're not giving money to most of them. And so, the question we should be answering is this the best use of these dollars? If this makes them eligible for grants, then maybe it's a good use for the dollars. But I do think the mayor's questions get at an important point, which is we do a tremendous amount of them for them in terms of our in-kind support of their major fundraiser. Do we provide the electricity, or do they pay for that?
They pay for that.
Okay. But we provide some staff support and the use of our campground facility for a month and a half. It's otherwise empty, so it's not a huge marginal cost for us.
Nobody's using the campground.
Right. No, I'm not saying it's a huge gift, but we are supporting the organization already, and I think unless they want to explain to me how this $1,250 puts them in a position like Ross is speculating to get more grants, I'm inclined to say that we'll treat them like we treat all the other great nonprofits in town.
Who didn't ask?
Yeah.
Yeah, who didn't ask, and who also don't,
Case in point, well, we talked about having some sort of way that people could ask for a grant next year, is that correct?
I think anyone can ask in this area, right? We've had, like I said, we've had the Humane Society. I don't know that we want to open up.
Well,
That-
that's where we've got to be the question about not opening it up to every nonprofit in
It's interesting.
the city.
I look at the nonprofits essentially as those specifically doing things to enhance the arms of the council, right? And so when I look at helping services, I see a lot of their work overlapping with public safety, right? We're talking about substance abuse, we're talking about battered women, domestic violence. We're talking about things that complement the work of our police officers and probably what I would imagine help them in some fashion. In the same way we funded the Humane Society because we didn't want our police officers to be dog catchers, right? So, I do think that when I'm looking at nonprofits, it's not any nonprofit. It is ones that enhance the work of the city and further our goals related to that.
Well, if that's the case, these all are an arm.
Right.
Which
That's why I have,
I'm glad you came back around with that take on it there, because again, these donations, if you will, whatever you want, contributions, still have to solve a public purpose. So whether it's through a 2080 where we formalize what that public purpose is, or even a resolution that states the council finds public purpose in it and what it is, it cannot be just an outright gift of here's cash, go forth and do
Okay.
with it.
That's a good way of looking at it, I think. So what we'll be doing is we'll wait until Kristen brings back information on the 17,000.
And I'll update that, that spreadsheet that I dropped into Dropbox tonight with the FY25 requests and build that in. So a version 2.2 will get pushed out
Okay,
later this week.
And would you do that to reflect the sustainability funds versus council contingency funds?
Do you want me to show like a fund balance off to the side that here's hotel, motel, like council contingency, hotel, motel, here's sustainability fund balance.
The things that
Here's
aren't
TIF LMI fund
Mhm.
balance. Here are three options.
the buckets.
Yeah, three
oh yeah,
buckets.
there you go. I think
Yeah.
that would be good.
Okay, I will do that.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. We still have a vacancy on the Human Rights Commission and Sustainability Commission. We have not had any applicants in either one, correct? Okay. City managers and department heads?
I'll try and keep mine brief. First thing, Steve Van Dyke with Strand Associates is planning on being at the next council meeting.
I'm sorry, with,
Strand and Associates, sorry, they used to be Fox Strand, they got bought out. Wastewater treatment plant engineer.
Okay.
So, planning on being here at the February 19th meeting, looking at possibly doing a 5 o'clock start work session so that council can focus on that one particular item prior to the meeting, and then start the meeting and get through the business. Does that work for council?
That's next. council.
It'd be the next council meeting, the February 19th.
19th.
19 at 5:15.
Put a 5 even, so that we get enough. I know I'd be pushing it a little bit over.
Who's bringing activities for my kids? I'm kidding, it's my job.
and the 19th is President's Day, and we're still having a council, because it's not a,
Yeah, because we have Martin Luther King, we don't have President's Day.
gotcha, okay.
So that was the first item. Second thing I'll get into, we're in legislative season, and number of bills out there that would impact cities, a lot of them actually. Couple ones I want to note. One is going to be Senate Study Bill 3016, which is a full-on ban for automatic traffic enforcement cameras, and does have a hands-free phone use component to it. One of the reasons I find this one kind of interesting is the tag on of the hands-free phone use as well. Now you see a lot of lobbying efforts and stories around my daughter would still be alive if it wasn't for somebody on their cell phone. Things like stories like that bring emotion into the conversation on automatic traffic enforcement cameras. And so the two, while they sound like they might have a relationship, this is honestly more my opinion, but I believe that hands-free use is being tacked onto there to plead to the emotional case of we've got to pass this bill to get that ATE ban passed. So that one's out there. Senate files 454 and 457 both apply to civil service. 454 on the hiring side, which actually would allow for cities to suspend the civil service hiring process, or even put on, even just put them on hold temporarily. For example, actually, Decorah, we just had an issue where we certified a list, and unfortunately, it didn't work out for those that were on the list, so we had to start the whole process all over again. So there's a positive side on the 454. 457, however, relates to disciplinary action and makes it even more difficult to discipline anyone covered under civil service. And I know John's been keeping an eye on that one as well. Another one which has garnered a lot of public exposure, especially locally here, Senate Study Bill 3131, which talks about public libraries and their structure, as well as their levy rate. Today we're being told that, there was a subcommittee meeting assigned to this for this afternoon that was canceled, and we were told that there was an amendment forthcoming. The amendment is apparently going to remove a provision that was in there that would have taken the 6 3/4 cent shall levy for cities and counties towards a public library. The proposal was to take shall and make it may. Well, words make a whole lot of difference. And so the amendment is going to take out that revision, so leave the 6 3/4 shall, leave that alone. I haven't seen this amendment though, so I don't want to provide too much commentary on it tonight, but it also takes the structure, which in the state of Iowa, public libraries are vastly different than other city departments. Council's heard me talk about this, especially during budget season, where your authority with the library is you set a budget, you say, here's the total dollar amount the library is getting, there you go. Go forth and do with what you want. That's how they're set up under code. And any change to that would require an election with at least 60% of the population, or excuse me, 60% of the voters in support of a change. And this can vary from changing the composition, changing the number of years of service. So let's say the library board currently has, I think, a 4-year term, if I remember right. But let's say we wanted to change is it 6?
I think it's 6.
Okay, so if it's 6 and council said, hey, we're having a hard time filling vacancies, we want to go to 4, nope, not doing it, because you'd have to put it out to an election of the public and they would have to do it. So one of the things that this would do is it would take the library board and the kind of the structure under code, that the council can change that structure by ordinance as opposed to vote. So the council would then assume more authority over the library than the current setup. It also has a component in there that as of July 1st of 2025, all, not assets, property would become, all property of the library would actually be handed over to the cities. So depending on who you ask on who owns the library building, you're going to get different answers, honestly, depending on the relationship between the city and the library board. So that was one of the issues. Did get some clarification. Kristen got some clarification, or a legal opinion, because one of the questions I had was, does that mean like all of its equipment inside and the books? Because quite frankly, I want nothing to do with the books inside that building. Well, it has a little bit to do with my.
Because of the liability?
Anyway, which books go in the library, I want nothing to do with. I want nobody to call me and say, this book's in there, shouldn't be in there. Honestly, nothing I enjoy more than somebody calling and saying, I've got a problem at the library. Say, great, call the library board, because I can't do anything. But anyway, want to make council aware of that bill as well. I'll push out more information once I get that amendment. Next one, House File 2062 would enhance penalties for open meetings violations and require mandatory training of elected officials upon election. So that's one that's out there. Senate File 455 would actually, it's regulation of topsoil. So our stormwater ordinance, we don't have a provision in there that says that you must, with a residential subdivision or commercial subdivision, once you develop, that you must put topsoil back. Some cities do have that, and it does make sense. I mean, if you've got stormwater runoff issues, you want grass to be able to be established in these subdivisions. This bill would actually say, can't do it. You cannot require topsoil as part of your subdivision ordinance. The home builders of Iowa are a huge advocate of this, because apparently that 1-inch layer of topsoil is what's driving up the cost of housing in Iowa. Let's see. And then that's the end of my legislative bills, the specific ones I'll point out. But another item of note, based on last year's legislation, the business property tax credit, which takes commercial properties and the first 150,000 valuations taxed at the residential rollback. If you remember, that was passed with a standing allocation from the state of $125 million to make up that difference to cities, counties as a result of that tax classification change. The LSA that came out prior to the adoption of that said that
LSA, sorry, acronyms.
Legislative Services Agency. They're the agency that puts forward a one-pager, essentially, on all the bills and the fiscal impacts. The LSA said that by the year 2029, that standing appropriation of $125 million was not going to be sufficient. Turns out the LSA was wrong. That year's now. And so, based on current estimates, that 125 million is going to cover 70% of that business property tax credit across the state. So, anyway, that's the last bit of information I had. Carrie?
Carrie?
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
You don't want to follow that up?
I've heard it a couple times today, so I'm like, zoning out.
Okay,
Thanks.
how about over at the table? Going once, going twice? Okay. All right, we'll go down to you first. Right.
Nothing tonight.
Ross?
Nothing there.
Nothing
Randy?
tonight, Mayor.
Can I have their time?
No, nope. There was a reason I said nothing, Steve.
I do want to express gratitude to Steve Lewis for stepping forward to continue his service to the city. That was great to see his name on there. I don't know if I've been paying attention to legislative news north of the border. I won't give you a complete update, but Minnesota is considering eroding local control by passing a law prohibiting cities from establishing parking mandates. I think that's obviously something that I think it's good to not have parking mandates, but I think that should come from cities, and so I hope that we get out ahead of this before Iowa takes that away from us too. I'm just going to keep bugging everyone about parking for a while. And finally, I saw a study today that I'm happy to share with anyone who wants to reach out to me, but it sort of showed that Minneapolis in particular, was the Midwestern city that over the past 5 years has constructed the most new housing. And Minneapolis is also the only Midwestern city that has seen rents go down. And so, if we want to be serious about the affordable housing crisis that is making it so that many people who want to live here cannot live here, we need to find ways to encourage and allow for housing starts of all kinds without getting bogged down in too many concerns about, this will affect my particular sightline, or this building is a little too tall for my liking, or that building costs too much. That's not really affordable. The data is pretty clear. More housing makes for more affordable housing. So I'm going to keep banging that drum too.
Thank you. Kirsten?
Sticking with the mayor's theme of positive things, I want to give a couple shout outs tonight. One to the Decorah High School girls wrestling team. They won the state championship over the weekend. Especially Naomi Simon. She finished her career 130-0, won a four-time state champion. She'll be the first one ever in the history of the state, so that's pretty special. They had 9 girls go down, and all of them made it through at least 2 rounds of the tournament, or won at least 2 matches, so that's pretty outstanding. The other one I'd like to give to, I don't know if anybody knows Steve Nelson, but he does the work up at the park up here at Norm Smith Park up here by the co-op. He spends some of his time during the spring, summer, and fall going around rounding up gloves, hats, and scarves and stuff, and he puts those up in that park for people that maybe can't afford to buy anything like that. So keeps keeps people warm and kids warm during the winter months. And I just like to give a shout out to those 2 people. Thanks.
Christopher?
Nothing tonight.
Brent?
I have nothing, Mayor.
I did attend the fire department, a volunteer fire department fundraiser at T&G. Zach said they brought in about $58,000.
Nice.
It was really a lot of fun. There were less people, but more people were spending money. Andy Nimrod and I attended the facility committee through the school. It was the first meeting, and Jeremy. I am so, oh no. I told him, no, he's not. He's on the committee because he lives here in town. That's right. I apologize profusely for that. So other than that, anything else? I'll move for adjourn. Thank you very much.